Hey friend, welcome back to the Care Collective podcast. I am so glad that you're here. Today's episode is one that I think a lot of us need, and I'll admit I am working on this area too, but maybe you haven't even realized that you need support in this area. Because when we talk about caregiving, we talk about the emotional weight, the exhaustion, the responsibility, but we don't always talk about how it shows up in our relationship with food and our bodies. And I'm going to go ahead and give a warning here that if talking about food or eating disorders can be triggering for you, this might be an episode you want to skip, and that is perfectly okay. You do what is best for you. But the truth is that when you're caring for someone else or, taking care of yourself is often the first thing that goes out the window. I think that's natural. I'm not trying to shame anybody for doing that. Meals get skipped or rushed or replaced with whatever's easiest, and sometimes food becomes the only thing that you can control in a world that feels completely out of control. So today we're having a really important conversation about nutrition, emotional eating, stress, and what it actually looks like to care for your body when life feels overwhelming. And again, I want to emphasize this is not about perfection. It's not about dieting. It's not about having everything figured out. It's just about understanding what your body needs and giving yourself grace and learning how to support yourself in the middle of supporting everybody else. We'll talk through a couple of challenges that caregivers might face when it comes to food and kind of some solutions that we can offer there. So just know that you absolutely deserve support in this corner, and we were going to offer a source of it today. So I'm very excited to get into today's conversation.
Okay, awesome.
Alrighty, well, I guess we will go ahead and get started. So thank you so much, Alex, for coming on today. I'm super excited to be able to talk to you and just really love the first conversation that we had and kind of being able to connect and talk about an area that I think not many caregivers think about very much, which is like the nutritional aspect, but food is like 90% of our day, quite honestly, or feels like it revolves around it. So I guess just to start, can you kind of introduce yourself, your background, and
Yeah,
tell
of
us a little bit about
course.
yourself?
So I'm Alex Fleet. I am a registered dietitian, licensed nutritionist that lives in Charleston, South Carolina. I am from Florida, have a bachelor's and master's all around nutrition from Florida State University. I've been in this field over 7 years and I love it. And you're correct. Food is a huge part of our life. It's not just fuel. Is emotions, traditions, coping skills, good or bad. It brings a lot. And, the idea is that food can be fun, it can be exciting, and it doesn't have to give us bad feelings and cause stress.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that that's kind of one of the biggest things I've been learning lately is just how emotional food can be for people. And I think especially for women in particular, which I think are a large part of our audience, like a lot of caregivers are women. But just to start, I'd love to kind of hear, you said in particular you work a lot with eating disorders and, people at probably lots of different extremes of their relationship with food. So what are some things you kind of notice, at a high level that people are
Mhm.
kind of experiencing when it comes in these cases or learning to identify these things in
Yeah.
themselves?
I mean, there's a lot. So, especially in our current just society now, there's always been push on what our body should look like. That has been for as long as we can remember. I mean, think about back into wearing the girdles and all those things, there's
Yeah.
always been a push for women to look a certain way. And that's not saying that men don't have it too. But I think in my what I've experienced, a lot of women feel it possibly more.
Hmm.
It's a lot more in society. There's, like I said, there's still stuff for men. But
Sure.
what couple of things to be aware of is are you adjusting your life based around food? So, for
Mhm.
instance, if my friends are going to go out to get pizza, am I not going to go because of a diet that I'm on? That doesn't sound fun. That doesn't sound like living my life. Am I going to be extra moody or emotional because I couldn't have certain things? Or am I going to say, "Ooh, I can only have this on this day"? Food is just food. It should be fun and exciting and nourishment. There shouldn't be this food police that we've created in our noggins. And sadly, a lot of people have. And it doesn't have to just be an eating disorder. It can be disordered eating.
Right. Right.
Like
Where do you
disordered
kind of
eating.
draw that line then between the two of
Yeah.
them?
So there's very specific criteria. Dietitians don't diagnose eating disorders. That would be your
Sure.
mental health providers. Disordered eating can be something as simple as, and people are gonna be like, what? That's crazy. Following a diet, following a keto diet. That's a fad diet. That would be a version of unless it's for a medical reason, you're taking out what's called macronutrients. You are taking things away
Mhm.
that your body needs because you think that it's going to have some health benefits. And so that would be disordered to some extent. An eating disorder is going to have very, very strict criteria that somebody has to meet. But people probably don't realize like how easy it is to meet that criteria. And it's not
Mm,
based on their body size. It is going to be based on a lot of other stuff. For instance, how many calories, like, or how much are we eating? How much are we restricting? Are we
right.
purging? And purging isn't just throwing up. It can be over exercising to compensate for food. That's really
Mhm.
common. Have you ever heard of it's Thanksgiving, we have to go earn our food, right? They go
Right.
do the 5K or something in the morning.
Right. Yeah.
Why do
No,
you
I've definitely heard of that, which I think, and that's to say there's probably people that would hear that and be like, well, I'm just doing it because I like it, which is great. Like people that are doing
Yeah,
that, that's great. But
that's
I think
fine.
it's if you already have the tendency to be obsessive about things, and if you see things as that exchange, like outright, and you don't say, like,
Right.
I can just have ice cream today because I want to have ice cream and I enjoy it, right?
Exactly. Right. And that's the
It's
thing.
that
Like, if
kind
you
of
want to
thing.
go do a turkey trot, like it's a tradition, heck yes, do it. Have fun.
Absolutely.
But it shouldn't feel like a chore. It shouldn't feel like if I don't do this, it's going to cause me stress. It's going to cause me like feeling like I can't eat something that I want to eat at Thanksgiving.
Right. And I think something for people to recognize and think about as well is if you are trying to change your diet, be healthier, yes, there are big changes you have to make, but there's no way any of that is going to happen overnight. Whether you're in recovery from an eating disorder, whether you are just realizing patterns of disordered eating and you're trying to improve, like that takes a long time. So learning to have grace for yourself through that process is obviously a very key part to any kind of recovery, right?
Yeah, like because think about change is not supposed any change. It's not
Mm,
supposed to be overnight. Like it's successful, like per research, successful change is small baby steps. Eating disorder, disordered
right.
eating, changing lifestyle things. It all takes time. And it literally could look like, oh, I don't eat enough vegetables. I add one vegetable in a week. It could
Mm-hmm.
be that simple. And people are like, oh my gosh, but that's so easy. Good. It
Right.
should be easy. Like, we want you to succeed. I don't want to go,
Right.
ooh, Mikayla, you need to do it 6 days a week. And then you
Yeah.
fail. And then you're like, I can't do this.
Exactly. No, and I think that's something that, and I don't know if you have any tips for how to navigate this or things that you encourage people to do, but is one of those things that day to day you might not see the difference, but if you record your progress, like a year later, you're going to look back and be like, "Whoa, now I'm doing this other thing I wouldn't have even considered, being able to do this with my diet, my
Yeah.
progress." So, and I think that applies to really anything in life that we're talking about beyond just, diet changes is that I think it's hard with these small changes to pat yourself on the back because you're like, whoop de
Mhm.
doo, I ate a carrot this week. But then a year
Right.
later, you're doing so much more. And so I think learning to positively reinforce yourself and celebrate those moments is what's going to help you maintain that stability to make these bigger changes, right?
I mean, reflection is so big, right? We do that with our
Mhm.
therapists. They'll even ask you, like, well, what about this, right? One of my
Yeah.
favorite things to do with my clients is if they need, because people tend to be so hard on themselves. We are
Yeah.
always our toughest critics. So if they have a planner or they want to put a note in their phone, I say once a week, look back and tell yourself one thing you're proud of yourself. And it could literally
Mm,
be, I drank the 2 bottles of water that I needed to drink on Wednesday, because those are wins. Those are wins that we
right.
can control, right? So when we start to like get more into the nutrition realm and all of that, I get away from the scale. I'm like, you can't control that.
Mm,
Let's focus on what we can control and look at those wins. Let's look at like what we decided to do and make the effort. And I think that
right.
reflection is huge. And it can be writing
Absolutely.
down, it could be thinking about it, talking to someone about it. If you have a family, this is one of my favorite things. Sit around at the table and do like high lows. You can take the low out if you want, but it's
Mm,
like, what was the positive of the day? Like, what success? And it could have been something simple as like a kid's like, I passed my math test, right? Like, and
right.
it should be
Right.
making a lot of these things because why not? Let's celebrate those wins.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to hear because I think some of what people don't understand is just how unique and variable every person's body is. Like, yes, there are best practices, like everyone should be having vegetables and like there's things that we can tie to and say are best practices when it comes to nutrition. But I still know that every single body is so different, and it may take
Mhm.
someone 5 years to lose the same amount of weight it takes somebody a year to do, right? Like everyone just kind of reacts differently. So what do you kind of say to encourage people and help them figure out how it
Yeah.
feels very overwhelming and complicated?
So, one of my big things is the wins. Like, I'm a big advocate, especially working in the eating disorder realm and disordered eating. I don't use scale victories because it's just, like you said, it's so different for everybody. Somebody's body might want to be where it's at. And what we're trying to do is accept that, like, that's okay, but we can
Mm,
still make changes to feel good that we enjoy, and it still leaves room for other stuff. So, for instance, I'm like, all right, let's look at the wins of let's make these small changes of adding vegetables in or whole grains
mm,
once a week or adding more fruits or more water. And let's look at those wins versus the scale victories. And that's what you can control. And that's when we
right,
can start to be like, ooh, I am feeling good because I'm getting that good
right,
nutrition. But I'm also still having cake and ice cream because, yeah, it's delicious. You should. But
right.
we should eat a whole gallon of ice cream for dinner only because your stomach's really gonna hurt. Like
Yeah,
that would
yeah,
not feel good. But there's no reason you can't have some ice cream with a yummy dinner that you made.
absolutely. And I think something that I've learned that works well with my brain is creating whatever the goal is that makes sense to me in the
Hmm.
scope of my world. So, like, just telling myself I need to exercise because it's going to make me healthier, I'm like, cool, that's great. But, like, what I really want to exercise for is because I like hiking and I want to be able to climb
Right.
further and longer. Like that's a goal I would like to work towards, right? So
Yeah.
you can kind of apply a similar thing to your food and be like, okay, I want to be able to show up for the people around me better and have energy,
Yeah.
right? Like it can be more than just like, oh, I have a checklist and I need to eat food, I need to do these things. You can figure out if it is emotional, what's your positive emotion to put behind it?
Right. Well, and it also intertwines like the individuality, right? Like everyone
Exactly.
is so different and everyone needs different things. And so it's the same thing with our goals too. Like, yeah, we want to be
Mhm.
healthy, but like let's pretend someone has children, right? And they want to be able to go to Disney World and not be tired.
Yeah,
Well, we got to have good nourishment. We got to wake up and have breakfast. We need to have some snacks. We need to have lunch. Like, we shouldn't go the whole day not eating. And even if we're trying to save money,
absolutely.
pack stuff. Heck yes. Like, that's fine. And so it's looking at like what thinking of the small goals for like breaking it down because like we're looking at the top of our iceberg, right? The top is
Mhm.
saying health, feel good, but what are our underlying things here? What are the things that we want to really get to? Is that walking at Disney not getting short of breath and feeling good? Is that
Right.
walking on a doing a 5K for the first time? Is it being able to go on a trip and know that like you're going to have the energy to do it?
Mhm. And I think that's kind of, I'm sure some people probably listening to this and being like, "Oh, this is all great and all, but how does this apply to caregiving?" And I think the link that I see here is just the common thing I see all the time with caregivers is how they don't take care of themselves, and I think food is one of the first things that can go out of the window, right? So I
100%.
I say all these things to say that you should be learning and understanding and focusing on if you're talking about your full and total well-being as a person and your physical wellness, like nutrition plays a really big role in that. And I think I've even just learned personally lately like how much one little being insufficient in one nutrition in your body can really throw off so many other areas of your life and can
Yeah.
lead to bigger health problems, right? And you really need to be, I mean, I don't want to say you have to be in perfect health to be a caregiver, but that's going to be a lot of stress you're under. And so doing as much prep work as you can to help yourself is really important, right?
Because it's physical and mental, right? So if you think about it, if you're not nourished, your brain's not working 100%, meaning some little thing that might not stress you out as much if you're fully nourished could feel like the end of the world. Then physically, like how, like when I think of caregiving, there's so many varieties, right? But what
Mm-hmm.
if you have to be able to move the person you're helping? What if you need to have the strength to get them some to the bathroom? You can't
Right,
do that if you don't have nutrition. It's not possible. So,
right. And I think, as I was kind of prepping and looking into these different things and trying to see what are the, common problems or roadblocks that are going to pop up that I love to kind of talk through how you'd approach them. We can talk about these one at a time. But
mhm,
I think one that I see a lot of people struggling with is the time. And so making time for breakfast, making time to eat lunch because, oh, I got to go take mom to her doctor's appointment
Yeah.
or got to take my kid to a doctor's appointment. Maybe they're taking care of a child, right? I'm sure that's something you hear all the time working with
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. All the time. So
Yeah.
one thing that I love to emphasize that you already said is if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of them. And that's the whole point, right? So the time component is huge. A couple little fun things that can do to make it easy. People always beat themselves up and think that we should live in this perfect world that doesn't exist and cook these extravagant home cooked meals from scratch.
Yeah.
I mean, cool, but not everyone can do that. And that's not realistic. Crock
Right.
pot meals, one pan sheets, lifesavers. You could
Yes.
do the meal delivery services, take advantage of the 50% off and cancel it. Do that.
Hmm.
Neat thing is Publix. You guys have Whole Foods, things like that. They have pre-made meals you can go grab. That's
Right.
fantastic. Use the hot food bar. Like all of those are perfectly fine. You don't have to meal prep on a Sunday for the whole week. Some people love
Right.
it and that's great. And that's sometimes not realistic for everyone. So think about like your family. Okay, could we go grab like this family size meal from the grocery store, pop it in the oven while everyone's showering after like soccer practice,
Hmm.
home like a good meal. Because you like if you grab a rotisserie chicken, it's still chicken, it's still
Right.
protein, and it's still tasty.
Exactly.
So
Well, I'll have to double check if this is nationwide or if this was just one person's location, but I even saw that Whole Foods puts their, like, the meal prep kit that we're kind of, well, I know it's not a meal prep kit,
I
but
think
it
they do.
basically feels like
Yeah.
that. They put it on sale on Sundays and Mondays down to like $20 for the thing instead of
Yeah.
35 or something. I saw somebody post that theirs was on sale. I don't know if that's like contingent on them having so much that they need to sell or if that's every location on Sundays and Mondays. I'll fact check that and see. But anyways, like there's lots of ways to kind of get creative and plan around these different things. And I think another thing too is just like you said that if you're not going to make the time, then you're going to have worse problems that will cause you more time, right?
Right.
Like the brain fog or the, other things going on.
It's also hard like when you have your plate is so loaded, right? And so much is
Mhm.
going on and a caregiver is more than a full-time job just in that sense.
Absolutely.
Like even if it's an elderly parent, children, whatever it looks like, on top of if you have to have work and taking care of a home and all these things, it's the idea of adding one more thing on there feels like it's going to shatter, right? But it's kind of maybe coming from the perspective of like, I just maybe try one meal this week. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's okay. If you go through Chick-fil-A, it's fine. You didn't, it's not the end of the world. You're okay. But like maybe think like, could I grab the rotisserie chicken tonight? Could I grab a bag of frozen vegetables from the freezer section?
Mhm.
And could I even get like some sweet potatoes and pop them in the microwave, right? Like
Right.
perfectly fine. That's a great
Yeah.
meal. Even if you
Right.
have to grab canned, because let's be real, groceries are expensive. Get some canned
Yeah.
groceries, low sodium, strain them in water, rinse them off, and cook them in water because that's usually the thing is it's higher in sodium. They're
Mm.
still vegetables. They still have nutrition.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of leading into the next point I wanted to talk about as well is that I think food insecurity obviously leads to a
Yeah.
lot of difficulty, and that's kind of the number one problem caregivers bring up is just how their budget's already tied up in so many other things that
Mhm.
maybe you've even got a parent in a situation that's foregoing food for their child over eating as much themselves. Like, I think that can lead to a lot of long term things. And again, not trying to bash anybody for any of their decisions and wherever you're at,
Mhm.
like, you're doing the best you can and you're amazing for doing the things that they can do, right?
Right.
But I think that is a realistic challenge that a lot of caregivers are facing right now with
100%. I
nutrition.
mean, food insecurity, rural areas, there's food deserts. I mean, and when I came from Florida and working in Tallahassee at the time, we served like the biggest ones, I think the top five. And
Yeah.
so I went out there, I went to the grocery stores, I looked what was in there. They don't have chicken breast. They don't have
Mm,
low sodium vegetables. You know, a lot of the stuff that we push that's health, that's the best options doesn't
right.
exist. So how do we make that work? One, churches are fantastic. They usually have some
Mm,
resources for people. It is okay to ask for help. I think that is really hard for caregivers and people in general to be like, I need help. Ask for help.
absolutely.
There are of course, I can't think off the top of my noggin. There are different organizations that can give you ideas, things like that. But grab the canned vegetables. Obviously, fresh fruits and veggies, wonderful. If you can't do that, frozen's great. If you can't do that, canned is fine. Just trying to get low
Absolutely.
sodium options. Buy the big bag of the rice. That's going to save some money, right? Put it in an
Mhm.
airtight container so it doesn't go bad. Freeze things. Like if you make a big meal and you can only eat half of it, freeze the rest. Take
Right.
advantage of the buy one, get one at Publix or even at like our Piggly Wigglies or any of those places.
Mhm.
Like freeze things if you can. Um, and don't beat yourself up if you can't get fresh things all the time. They just don't last as long, and that's okay. Big thing for the food deserts and stuff, I would really try to see what's in the area, like what programs exist. Ask your
True.
local hospitals, local churches, and just do the best you can and focus on just getting food. Don't beat yourself.
Absolutely.
Get something in the body.
Yeah, and one resource that I'll plug in the note for people that I just pulled up and had to remember the name of it, but feedingamerica.org is an organization that has a you can enter your zip code and you can see what, food banks, meal programs. They also have some good resources on like what is it like to visit a food distribution program for the first
Mhm.
time. And with that, I'll even say that I have loved seeing some of these creators on TikTok. I assume they're also on Instagram that have just been posting like here's me going through the food pantry line and this is what I got and here's what I made with my order this week. And I think just trying to normalize the conversation and taking away the stigma around it. And obviously, their comments are filled with people being judgmental, but like seeing everyone else in the comments going back at those people and being like, this is great that they're asking for help. And I'm glad that they're utilizing these resources because I think something a lot of people don't know as well, too, and maybe you know a little bit about this as well, but that a lot of these programs are contingent, the funding is contingent on how much it gets used. And so
Yep.
I've heard that they often have things going to waste, going bad. Like, I remember going to volunteer at a food bank one time and then being like, here, you can have some of the cupcakes we have. And I was like, shouldn't these be for people? And they're like, we have more food than we can give away.
Yeah.
So please, this is a thank you, So that's why I think we should be encouraging more people to use it if they need it.
Yeah. There's no shame in not being able to do on your own. And I think that
Absolutely.
for some weird reason we've made it that like you should be able to do all of it. You should be like a superhero and be able to do every single thing on your own. That's bananas. Like if we think into different cultures and stuff, it's about the family, right? It's about the family unit doing it together, taking care of the elderly, but also the neighbors helping. And like that's how we do better, right? We do better by helping. And it's okay to say, you know what, I feel overwhelmed. Can somebody help me? And I need to go to the food bank or I need to go to the church using those resources. You're right. If we don't use them, we lose them.
Right. So in some ways, you're going to be helping other people to make sure that they have access to this when they need it down the line too. If that makes you feel better about it too, and you need a reason for that, like you're helping other people by utilizing these resources. And everyone that I have ever seen in these videos working the food banks has been so nice, and they're great. Like there's lots of different ways you can get help. And if anybody's listening to this and needs help looking up how to navigate it, like you can always DM our account, and I'm more than happy to help try to point you in the right direction there. Because I know that's been a stressful point for people this past year, seeing how food stamps have changed and
Yeah.
things going on there, and not trying to debate the policy of what should or shouldn't be done there, but the reality is that it's caused stress for people. And so I think that's when it's time for communities to step in and provide help. And so I've seen just really cool people in my own community, even in Charleston. That's where we connected, was through a Charleston Facebook group of people that will even post for their friends sometimes and say, hey, I know so and so's having, I'm not going to name them, having a hard time. Can anybody help out? And I've seen so many people step in and help. So I think learning to speak up and how to voice these things, and when you're in a position to help others, stepping up to be the one to help, is what's going to help get people through these times.
100%.
So then I think really the other kind of roadblock or barrier that I want to talk about as well is the emotional exhaustion that comes from being a caregiver, and how that can push, like all the emotions can push food to the back burner, or maybe they're even going to use that as a coping mechanism and
Yeah.
overeat, right?
Right.
Can we talk a little bit about the emotional side?
Yeah.
I mean, I know emotions have been strewn throughout this, but
I
specifically the
mean,
back burner.
it's you'll hear me say like if food was just a light switch, I tell this to people all the time, I wouldn't have a
Mm,
job. but there's so much to food. And when we think of like coping skills, right? Like we learn these from our therapists, hopefully from our family, things like that, is it's other ways to deal with stressful moments. But for various reasons, a lot of people don't get those mechanisms and they tend to turn towards food. Because think about it, like we get like dopamine hits and we get like excitement when we eat cupcakes and all these really fun things. But then if I ate like 6 cupcakes, which this is an exaggeration, my stomach's gonna hurt. And that didn't fix the problem, right? It was like a little band-aid for a second that got ripped off pretty quickly. And then it kind of added another little problem, feeling good. Then a lot of times guilt and shame and all of that comes. Well, it's okay, one, to be exhausted and to feel like if you want cupcakes, eat cupcakes. Heck yes. But I do think it's important to realize, like on either side of this spectrum, you've got to eat and we've also got to have some coping skills. And those are, I mean, even if someone can't afford a therapist, which in my opinion, I think everyone should have one and it should be accessible to everybody because they're amazing.
Absolutely.
But two is there's plenty of resources online, grounding exercises, breathing exercises, all of that. So in that moment, if you are feeling overwhelmed and you want food, if you're hungry, please eat. If you're also like, let's just say you're super full, you're stuffed, you ate enough and you're thinking, I'm going to go back for more, take a second, right? Take a second and breathe. Look at like the things that you can see. Look for a certain color. Pay attention to where you're at and go, what do I need in this moment? What do I need a cupcake? Because heck yeah, if you need a cupcake, eat it. But in that moment, maybe you need a hug. Maybe you need to call a friend and hear it's okay, right? Like take a second to just breathe, let the emotions sit, figure out what you need. And like I said, if it's food, eat some food. But if it's not what we need, and then on the other end, let's make sure we're always eating because you always need food. So even if it's a snack, even if all you can do is grab McDonald's, okay, get McDonald's. It doesn't matter. You need food to be able to take care of yourself.
And that was one thing I think I loved from our first conversation as well, was the idea that, you know, and a lot of people you work with, whatever they are dealing with in their nutrition, usually if there is an eating disorder, it's not even so much about like they're lazy, they don't have discipline, or whatever is going on opposite side, that it's the real problem is that there's something deeper going on. And that's when you said you would meet with somebody and be like, yeah, we need to pull a therapist into this conversation too, right? Because we need to see what's the deeper thing that's going on. I think for caregivers, is it the grief that you're dealing with? Is it just the pure stress? Is it, you know, there's so many different emotions that go into being a caregiver that this might become the vehicle that you're using to get rid of that stress. Or there could be a million other unhealthy things that you're doing, right? Maybe you stay up too late at night because that's how you feel a sense of control, right? So I think it's taking a step back and looking at, okay, what am I actually feeling or what am I trying to not feel? And what am I doing to cope with that, right?
Well, because if you think about like our life in general, right? Like what we actually truly have control over. Like I can't control if a loved one gets cancer. I can't control if I lose my job. I can't control a lot of things. Usually, for the most part, we can control eating to some extent, right? Like we can control what we eat to, you know, like there's different variables that can affect that. But like even if a loved one has cancer, when they're sick, we can't control the medication. We can't control the outcome of their treatment. We can control what they eat. So a lot of times people tend to grasp onto that. And that in itself is not like the underlying reason for eating disorders. Eating disorders are so dimensional, like there's so much. But I do think that like people who are not taking care of themselves and their mental health are going to be more susceptible to mental health issues, depression, anxiety, potentially eating disorders. And so I think just recognizing, like we've said this a million times, if you need help, get help, whatever that might be. Dietitians need dietitians, therapists need therapists. We all need it. And so understanding that like it's not abnormal to use food, but let's find another way to deal with some feelings and then still have our cupcake too.
Right. And that was kind of maybe you didn't say this, maybe I've seen this somewhere else, or maybe I'm like making this too black and white, but if you have an eating disorder, you're probably going to be very likely to have depression, anxiety, some other kind of mental thing.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It's honestly, I don't think I've met anyone who just has an eating disorder. There's so many co-occurring things.
Yeah.
And that's why a therapist is so vital in the treatment. And it's not just a dietitian. And honestly, it should be a whole team. It should be a
Right.
therapist, a dietitian, a psychiatrist, ideally a medical doctor. Now, we don't always get that because we have to be honest, money doesn't grow on trees.
Absolutely.
But we do what we can, right? And we try to find options and things that it's realistic. And even when it comes to working with a dietitian or a therapist, you don't have to see them every week for an hour if you can't afford it.
Right.
We work. Like I have people that I wish I could, but if I
Yeah.
have to do 30 minutes every other week just so they get help, sure. And a
Right.
therapist will do that too. And there are therapists out there that have sliding scales and dietitian. And I even know people who do pro bono. It's not all that, not a ton, but like we do our best. And so I think that it takes a lot of work to do it, but the end result is totally worth it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing is that you can find people that will help you. I think that there's a lot of, people that will see their primary care doctor first because that's kind of what we're all taught to do is go to your primary care doctor. And I'm not trying to hate on primary care doctors, but we've all had experiences where they're kind of dismissive or like, okay, just lose
Mm-hmm.
weight if that's what's your problem with your health. Or, like, I remember I went one time to see a therapist, or I went to see a doctor and was like, hey, I'd love a, referral to a therapist. Do you think you have anybody you could recommend? And they're like, okay, well, here's this anxiety medication since it looks like your anxiety is high. And I was like, that's not what I was coming in here to ask for, right?
Yeah.
So I think sometimes you have to not be afraid to speak up, and maybe you start with the therapist and then
Mm-hmm.
they know a nutritionist they can work with, right? Because I think sometimes primary care doctors get stuck in the business of like 20 minutes per patient, like in and out. I have to
Yeah.
be fast, I have to be efficient, right? I have learned that there's a lot of really good therapists, nutritionists, especially if they have their own practice that can
Mm-hmm.
slow down, talk to you about more of the emotions of things. Because ultimately, a therapist is a person that's going to talk to you about how you're feeling and all the
Mm-hmm.
emotional weight behind it, right? Not to say
Right.
that there's not really good doctors that aren't also caring about you as a whole person, but I think sometimes you have to learn who to start seeing. And I'm sure that you have
Right.
people that you're the first one they've ever talked to about this, and then you're able to pull in these other people to help for other things, right?
Yeah, I always, even when I worked in the hospital years and years ago, I always tell people you have to be your biggest advocate. I
Right.
am very thankful for the first time in my life. I have the most amazing nurse practitioner that is a big advocate for like, let's look at the root problems, get you to the right people. And that's what we should have. And you're right.
Absolutely.
So like our medical system, I have a lot of opinions and they don't ask those opinions and that's
Yeah.
okay. They are limited on what they can and can't do because of multiple things. I do like your therapist, like if we're using insurance, usually it has to be 50 to 60 minutes for reimbursement. So you're going to get
Right.
that time dedicated to you. And then obviously out of pocket pay and stuff's different for everybody. But I mean, at least if you have insurance, get a referral list from the hotline, or go on your portal, get it. It takes time. You've got to find someone you connect with. It's the same thing for a dietitian. Like you got to connect. You got to feel like that's your
Absolutely.
person you can talk to. And dietitians will know therapists, therapists will know dietitians, we will know psychiatrists. We're a very tight community, especially in the disordered eating world.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's plenty of us that especially in this world, we're not looking at the weight, we're looking at you as a whole human being. There are
Right.
other providers that probably do, and that's their method, but I
Right.
find it more successful not to. The research shows us that too. So that's what we do.
Yeah. And there's going to be people that works great for them, and there's going to be others that maybe their brain does think more numbers, and maybe they are a very analytical person. And so I think, again, that's where it's finding what works best for
Right.
you and who you
Yeah,
connect with. And if you see them after one session, okay,
that's okay.
go
And
find
that's
somebody
fine.
else.
It doesn't hurt anyone's feelings. And I think that's sometimes scary for people. The idea of,
Right.
well, are they going to be mad? Heck no. We want you to get better. Anyone in this field wants you to get better, whatever that is.
Right.
And if you need somebody else, that's okay.
Yeah. And I think just, every time I have conversations with professionals like you who are truly so dedicated to even start these conversations, and I can see that you're very passionate about this, I think it's just a good reminder that there are people that care and there are people that truly dedicate their lives to helping people. And so, don't lose hope and think that you're never going to find somebody you can click with, because it may take your fifth or sixth doctor or Maybe you even have to go a little bit of a backwards route and start with somebody else, but you'll get there eventually. I think especially for these caregiver kind of people, as much as you're advocating for the person you're taking care of,
Mhm.
you need to advocate for yourself. And I know
Yeah.
that it is so hard for women, especially, to think about putting themselves first. So sometimes, again, if you can put it through that lens of, it's going to allow me to show up for my family, it's going to allow me to show up
Mhm.
for this person. If that's what pushes you to change your health and get help, then that's great. That's what you should focus on, right?
Because if you're not performing at 100%, like it's not, you're not able to give a good amount. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all the time. I see lots and lots of kiddos, and the poor parents are exhausted, and they have every right to be. They're
Yeah.
taking care of a kid that's sick, and they're not probably taking enough time for themselves. And it's so hard to contemplate carving out even 30 minutes,
Yeah.
but it's so worth it. It's so, so, so worth it. Even like I said, if it's once every couple weeks, like you said, the community, like we met on the Charleston Women's Facebook. Get on there and ask questions about providers. Who do you like? What is your experience? Ask the questions, find out what other people are experiencing. And I know there are people that can't ask for help from maybe family or friends, but I promise
Absolutely.
you there's somebody in that community somewhere that will help. And it's really scary
And
to ask, but they
you
will.
can even post anonymously in a lot of these groups now.
Yep.
Like, I see so
Yep.
many people that are like posting anonymously, can you recommend a doctor in the Somerville
Mhm.
area?
Yep.
And that's all it takes, and you'll get plenty of women. And although I will say sometimes it takes sharing a little bit more of your story so that people will
Hmm.
be motivated to answer if you're going to be anonymous. So I think even if you just said, like, hey, I've tried everything to try to find someone and I'm not clicked with anyone, please give me a recommendation for specific type of therapist I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what really helps people be able to make that kind of a recommendation and help you out. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this information today. I think that it'll be really helpful because I think this is a problem not many people talk about necessarily in this world of caregiving. But I think
Hmm.
I see it so often in my own family. I have seen their struggles. I've seen it in other people, kind of inadvertently, the things that they describe. It seems like
Yeah.
this is a stressful point for people. So I really hope that there's, things that people are able to take away from this. And if anybody happens to want to connect with you, what would kind of be the best way, or
Yeah. So
what specific states can you work with? Because I know you're limited in a lot of
Um,
areas.
so I can help pretty much anybody. I do all and everything with the exception of weight loss. I'm just very, very, very passionate to like help you love your body and, if not neutrality. The easiest place to probably contact me for me to direct you is going to be fleetnutrition@gmail.com. I'm pretty good at responding to my emails. I work for a wonderful organization, like group that's all therapists and myself and another dietitian out of Florida, Restored Purpose. And I'm licensed in South Carolina, Florida, and Tennessee. And we have therapists licensed in multiple places. So I can get you directed there and kind of help you figure out, what's the best route. And if not, even if you just have questions and you're like, hey, do you know anyone who could help me with this? Not a problem.
Absolutely.
That's part of being a community, right? Is helping each other with helping, and finding what you need.
Absolutely. No, and I think it's so important just because I think sometimes the difficulty for people is just not even knowing what kind of person they need to talk to. So even you being able to say, that's not my specialty, but hey, this is the word you should be looking for. Let me see if I can,
I
connect you
mean,
to someone. I think is great.
yeah. People will post like about PCOS, right? I mean, I know it, I could help,
Yeah.
but like there are people that specialize in certain parts. Like my specialty is eating disorders and disordered eating with a strong background in clinical nutrition. But
Right.
like if you're like, hey, Alex, are you familiar with this very rare disease? I mean, I'm sure I could do it, but there might be a specialist. Let's see if we
Right.
can get you to that person, right?
Absolutely.
But I think it's just kind of, making sure that we all just help each other and figure out where to go and all of that is the idea.
Absolutely. No, for sure. I agree with that. So again, thank you so much for sharing all this today because I think it was so helpful. Before we wrap up, I just want to leave you with this. If you're a caregiver listening to this and you've been putting yourself last, skipping meals, running on empty, or just feeling completely disconnected from your own needs, I want you to know this. You are allowed to take care of yourself too. And I also want you to know that that will take time, that I don't expect anyone to be able to put these new practices and habits into place overnight because you are a human being But just remember that the more that you nourish yourself, both physically, emotionally, mentally, the more you're able to actually show up for the people that you love in a way that feels sustainable and not draining. Even if it's just one small step this week, maybe you're going to work on eating breakfast regularly. Just give yourself one moment of checking in with yourself and one choice that tells yourself that you matter too, and you'll find that over time these decisions will get easier. And that absolutely counts. These small steps will count over time. And as always, you are not alone in this. This is exactly what this space is for. If this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you ever need support, resources, or just someone to point you in the right direction, you can always reach out to us. We are absolutely here for you. I'll talk to you in the next episode.